Hello and welcome to the Verhoeven Effect podcast for a very special episode number 2. We are watching the 1974 John Borman film starring Sean Connery, Charlotte Rampling, and Sarah Kesselman in Zardoz.
That's right, all you Zardoz heads. This is the one you've been waiting for. This is it. The interpretation of the most coherent film ever made. Actually, a lot of people have seen this movie.
Yeah.
And they all have something to say. I mean, initially, the goofiness of it just overwhelms everyone. But then you watch it a few more times, and it's like, oh, okay. You know, this was fairly...
There's interesting ideas in there, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas in there that resonate through today, but it is a weird movie.
Yeah, and I don't think you're supposed to take it seriously.
No.
I mean, it even says out front that it's a sarcastic movie. There's a lot of almost like Monty Python, well, not just Monty Python in general vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a movie that introduces itself with a... Well, they wrote the introduction with what was the guy's name? Frayne?
Yeah, Arthur Frayne.
Arthur Frayne. Like, it has an introduction with like a head floating around with a guy with a drawn-on mustache explaining who he is and his character's motivations, and it's as clear as mud. They said the studio made him include that because the people wouldn't know what the movie was about. And everything the guy said was like, okay, this is weird exposition that doesn't really say a whole lot. It's just some guy wearing...
It's supposed to prepare you for the movie. Like, hey, it's going to be weird.
Yeah, some guy wearing a towel on his head.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was most surprised that Fox put this out.
Yeah.
But I don't know where Fox was in the mid-'70s. I don't know if they're struggling or what. So.
Well, mid-'70s was a weird time for movies and for science fiction. Especially science fiction. It was not a cornerstone back then like it is now.
Yeah.
It was and there was and this was a very abstract movie that was self-deprecating, self-indulgent, kind of combined a lot of weird things. And the director fully admits everyone was drugged out of their minds making it. So it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be amazing. Because this was not only directed by John Borman, it was written and produced by John Borman, who had just come off of The Deliverance a year before.
And we watched one of his movies on American Greed Fact. We watched Point Blank, which is like a crime thriller that's completely unconventional.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the first 20 minutes are almost incoherent, but like the last bit of it is kind of pretty traditional, but it makes it more special because of the weirdness that it starts with.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie is set in the year
2293.
Yes. And this movie was filmed entirely in Ireland. And it was funded and produced by an Irish, American, and British team. It was made for $1.5 million, and it shows.
That's some nice production stuff there. I mean,
they're getting a lot of tax breaks too.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. There's some stuff there is like, this is supposed to be a force field. Like, dude, that's a plastic bag.
Yeah. Well, and Sean Connery was getting paid almost $250,000 to be in it. So,
yeah, this wasn't a great period for Sean Connery. Apparently, he got some extra money by like driving himself to work, and then like the money that would go to pay like a driver in a car, they just gave him half that money on top of his paycheck.
Well, no, he went to the director, John Borman, and he was like, "How much is you paying this guy to drive me back and forth to work?" And he's like, about 300 pounds a day. And he goes, okay, why don't we just cut that guy out? Me and you split the difference. And he was like, John Borman said, that's how I know I was dealing with a Scottish guy. Because he thought he was going to be like, no, I'll drive myself. Just add that to the budget of the movie. He's like, oh, no. We can split the difference, me and you. We can pocket the difference and not paying that guy. It's like, oh, that's okay. But he thought it was funny in the end. I have not heard the John Borman commentary on this because it's kind of hard to find a reasonably priced, region correct
Oh, there's
version of
one.
this
Okay.
movie. But
Yeah.
I've read the transcripts of the John Borman
Oh, okay.
commentary for the purpose of this podcast. So
Yeah, because I got this on Amazon, and they just had it available in standard definition, and it is a pretty bad version of the movie.
yeah, yeah,
It basically looks like they just took it straight from a VHS or something.
yeah,
Because there's like scenes like where he's in the house and you can see like shit written on the walls. And like, boy, I wish I knew what that said, but I can't because it's too blurry. So I don't know if there's better versions out there or remasters of this movie, but
There's a Blu-ray with commentaries on it.
Oh, okay.
It's not specific to the U.S.,
okay.
which is weird because this movie was U.S. production company. But whatever. Well, it was John Borman's Irish production company, which he incorporated it in Ireland because he got huge tax breaks at that time for doing anything considered art. And this could be considered art.
Yeah.
It is.
So we have pretty much like the first scene in the movie, which is probably the most famous scene in the movie. You've probably seen it on YouTube or something. Yeah, the floating statue head. You have dudes on horses running around and screaming. The warriors worship the head, and Zardoz gave the gift of the gun. The gun is good. The penis is evil. And then they're like chanting like "kill the multipliers," and then the statue vomits guns and bullets.
Yeah, the statue vomits guns out of its mouth, and the people just pick them up and start shooting. Everyone. This was a modern. This is a they predicted the Trump rally with this movie.
Yeah, then Connery like shoots the camera, and it's kind of this fourth wall breaking thing. So there's kind of that stuff going on. Well, I looked up the gun. That gun's pretty neat.
You know what that is?
Yeah, it's called a Fosbury Webley. It's a semi-automatic revolver. Because the handle has the pistol handle has kind of like a rail on top of it, and then there's a revolver on top of that, and it reciprocates like a semi-auto does, and it indexes the cylinder and recocks the gun. So it's a pretty neat thing. And apparently, because the force of the bullet recocks it and stuff like that, it means you have like a really crisp one-stage trigger, as they say.
Yep, just complete pull. Yeah, those are neat guns. Look up the Webley revolvers on the internet. They look like a work of art. They have those wonderful channel grooves in them how the thing reciprocates and all that. It's a cool idea. Never really caught on. I think they were the only people that made them like that. But
I think that I think it was designed in like 1890 something, and they were produced in like 1905, and it's like, I mean, the 1911's just around the corner, so it's like,
yeah, you're not gonna like compare these two. It's like, I think the Webley is a far superior gun. It's like, oh really? Okay. But I like anachronistic weapons.
But yeah, that's why there's like a thing where he kind of like shoves it backwards, and I guess it's just kind of like cocking it, a way to cock it and then shoot it.
Yeah. Yes, the Irish authorities did not like all the firearms that had to be imported to make this movie. Because back then you didn't use rubber guns. You still had all that World War II surplus stuff laying around. So you just like ordered a crate of that. Now the barrels were filled with lead and they didn't have firing pins. They weren't working guns. But when you need a statue of a head god to vomit guns out, you need a lot of guns. And, the Irish authorities were worried that, terrorists might get a hold of this, because there were terrorists in Ireland at that time. So yeah, that was a few production hoops they had to jump through.
But that Fosbury Webley gun, it's there's a Forgotten Weapons episode on it, and but so I thought I was going to mention it for this movie, but no, I guess the most famous incarnation was the guy in the Maltese Falcon had it.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, it's a cool anachronistic looking gun. It's like, this is solving problems in a very different, unique way.
Yeah.
But they only hold 5 or 6 shots?
6 shots. They had they made a version, a 380 ACP version that had 8. But that shot the 454 or whatever it was there. whatever the Weber revolver shot.
Oh, 455. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that sounds big, and it was, but it had a really short, powder charge cartridge on it, so it didn't work too well. .455. Here we go. We've become a gun channel again.
I mean, it's only there's other guns. That's the one that's mostly used. There's plenty of other guns that get vomited out. So
yeah,
and you got some, like you said, World War II surplus guns, shotguns, and stuff like that. But.
Yes, and the other thing about this movie is the very interesting costuming. You got people running around with paper mache Zardoz heads.
Yeah.
And
Sean Connery in like a red diaper.
Yeah, like a red diaper with like 2 shotgun bandolier things holding his diaper on. Yeah, this movie's just weird from the word go. But once you get past it, once you shake the funny off, you start watching it, and it's like, well, there was some thoughtful writing here. There was some interesting ideas. It's a movie very much of its time, though. It's totally that 70s woo-woo shit. Lots of crystals and people acting strange. And but yeah,
there's that interconnection to everything. There's like faith, science, computers, astrology, whatever you got. It's like all intersecting here.
Yeah, and immortality.
It's all worthless.
Yeah. It's all meaningless. These people's lives have no meaning. But that's it. We have like this caste system here. You've got the brutals. Those are the lowest form of life. Those are the people that Zed and his friends kill, because they're, what are they called? What's Zed's clan? The hunters or whatever.
Oh, the exterminators.
Yeah, the exterminators. That's it. Yeah, the guys in the red diapers are the killers, and they're very male men with like developed muscles, and they ride around and shoot people off horses, and they rape in the name of Zardoz. But for some reason, like, that's okay, because that's what they do in this show, in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff, all the Outlander stuff, is not really explained a whole lot. You just kind of get images from it. It's like, that's a violent place.
Yeah, it's a terrible place, a post-apocalyptic world.
But then we have, once Connery shoots the gun, we kind of come back, and then Connery and a gun rise from like sawdust inside of Zardoz, inside the Zardoz statue head.
Grain, but yeah.
Oh, is it grain? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, is it sand? But it's more like, okay. That makes more sense. And then Connery shoots the man Zardoz, like not the god Zardoz, and he just kind of floats away.
Yeah, Louis Frame gets shot, and all he says because he's standing near the mouth, and Connery just rises up and looks around, and there's a bunch of like people in plastic, but naked, like just hanging from the walls. Like,
yeah, it's like what do you call that when you like vacuum seal plastic? They're just vacuum sealed people in bags.
Yeah, it's a lot of like boobs and naked bodies and stuff.
Also, there's just like food and grain in there.
Yeah.
But I think that's a point later on, because I think that was loaded in there from the Outlands.
Yeah, that's what. Well, Louis Frame's in charge of the Outlands for the Vortex.
Yeah, the
Vortex is the world where the immortals live, but they're not self-sufficient. They need the people to harvest grain and stuff. That's why Zed and the Brutals exist.
Yeah, well, they're harvesting the grain because they can make enough food for themselves, but not enough for the renegades and the
apathetics.
The apathetics.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, hang on, folks.
Okay, now we're at some farm. There's like bubbles over plants and wheels grinding meal or wheat or whatever. There's like evolutionary depictions on walls and stuff. And then we got the holographic ring that displays like a food report.
Yeah. This is the internet in the world of Zardoz. It's a ring you ask questions to and the machine answers you.
And then at 15 minutes into the movie, Sean Connery speaks for the first time and says food.
Yeah.
And then there's just like villagers outside just giving situational updates or whatever. And there you got a naked lady on a horse. And you got a lady in the water that stops Connery from doing things with her like psychic powers or whatever, because everybody in the vortex has psychic powers.
Yeah, everyone in the vortex is like is an immortal, and they're all like what 300 years old or older.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like no one dies there, and if you do die, they just rebuild your body and put your consciousness into the new body.
There's several fates that are going on, but yeah, your body can be destroyed, and then like the computer will just like rebuild you from like your DNA profile.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh no, your memories are all restored too.
Oh yeah. But yeah. The place they're in is called the Vortex, which I'm not sure if that's explained, or is that because it kind of it kind of seems like it's just this big bubble city that has a invisible shield around it that the outside can't get in. But then at some point they kind of make it sound like it was a starship at one point, but they failed and just landed it and just went on.
Yeah.
But that's, you're not going to get a whole lot of details. It's more about the general idea. And here's a cool new idea. We're not going to delve into it. Yeah, and we find out that Connery is named Zed, and he's an exterminator for Zardoz.
Yep.
Also that ring thing it like projects the Arthur Frayne guy who's like that's Zardoz, but I hear it saying it's Arthur Frayne, and so Zed's kind of confused. It's like that's Zardoz. What are you talking about? Who's this Arthur guy? Then a couple of ladies probe Zed's memories. That was that May and
I've got it here.
Consuela.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah Kestelman plays May, and she's more interested in the science of like, where did Zed come from, and what does he mean, and what happened, where is Frayne, and where did he go, and whereas Consuela is just more, she's like in charge of the whole place, because it's only women that are in charge there. That's not made clear in the movie, but in the commentary, he said, "Oh yeah, they just put women in charge because the men were too insane. They had a much higher rate of going crazy and, destroying the community or destabilizing it. So they put women in charge."
Oh, and probably I bet for how many times you have like a bunch of people touching Sean Connery, he probably wanted a bunch of women touching him.
Yeah, so. I'm sure that's played a part
too. Yeah, so the Vortex people are watching Zed's memories where he's just killing and raping people.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is, oh no, no, they're just saying like, this is like an infection. We should just kill him. Or Consuela is, because May's more intrigued.
Yeah.
This I have like, that's where I have like, it's the end of Act 1 and Act 2 is I write the question because you have a guy, his name's being Fred, but Friend. He asks, what was Arthur doing in the Outlands? And so that's why I have like the first plot point of the movie, and that's why I consider Act 2. So Act 2 is really kind of when they just get to Vortex, because it's like, because they're not really, like I said, 15 minutes in the movie, you get your first line from your main actor, and it's just food. But
yeah, here
we get more traditional weirdness, but like, with like spoken dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently nobody wanted to run Outlands, so Arthur did, but I guess he was like an artist, so he just did it all weirdly. So he created this image of a god for them to worship so he could control them.
Yeah. Which we find out through flashbacks. Well, that's more into Act 3. We won't cover that yet. But it's like Zed, one thing that's revealed, because May, like the second time because they always have votes on whether they're going to kill him or not, because he's an infection, and a lot of people vote against Consuela, because everything in this world is based on some kind of weird democracy. But you got to understand, these people are essentially the idle rich / apathetic billionaires that managed to survive whatever apocalypse happened, and it's pretty vague. But these people have been around for so long, they're just getting bored with their lives, and some of them do crazy stuff. And they become the renegades, who they make them into senile old people who really aren't effective.
Yeah, because their form of punishment is like making you age.
Yeah, because everyone in this movie looks like they're in their 20s, except Sean Connery.
But he's not from Vortex, so.
Yeah. But May finds out like he's not only more intelligent than they are, but he's also genetically superior. And she's like,
because he can get an erection.
Yeah, he can get an erection. Which is like, they explore that too, because nobody has sex in a world of immortals. They say there's no like sex urge, but also these people are very repressed. Like the things that are right and wrong in Vortex society are continuously debated and redebated. And what was right yesterday is wrong today. Does this sound familiar to anyone, by the way? But just throwing that out there. But it's like, yeah, these people are so far up their own ass they can't decide like what's right, what's wrong, or anything like that. And they have their society is this weird shifting table of you can do this, but you can't do that. But essentially, they're all going insane. Like they have access to this high technology, but it's not improving anything in their world or the outside world.
Well, they're just maintaining, like they just make enough for them to get by, and everything's working towards that, and like they just have all these menial tasks for themselves in a sense of fairness when they presumably could just like task it out to a machine or something.
Yeah.
And these are, and it's just the same people that don't age for hundreds of years, and it's all the same people in charge, and nothing ever changes, really.
Yeah, it's because Louis Friend did say about that going into space thing. It's like, oh, they tried that, but they could only go so far out, and they didn't find anything, so they just came back to Earth.
Yeah,
it's like, so this is a society that is essentially spent. Like there's no more worlds for them to explore. And again, they're just essentially
just maintaining, because they also have like no new ideas.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're doing the same things over and over again, and they don't reproduce.
They're just stuck in a loop.
And there's no genetic diversity, and like I said, so you've got the people that were too crazy and wild. They just age them into senility, but keep them perpetually alive in a senile state. And then you have the other people called the apathetics, who John Borman said those were more the people that were like entertainers that had a lot of money, but they weren't scientists or thinkers. They just quickly became these zombies that just stand around and stare and eat green bread if you throw it at them. But they essentially don't care like what happens, or they're just immobile in the society.
Yeah, they don't contribute.
No, it doesn't say that in the movie, but I'm going to blend a lot of things that I read from the Borman commentary with the movie, because it gives it a little more context. But also John Borman said a lot in his commentary of this movie, especially the last act. You can fast forward this bit. Yeah, just fast forward a little bit. Because this movie starts out super weird and then kind of becomes an action adventure story for a little bit, sort of one. And then then the third act, it just becomes this complete like drug trip, where it's like there is stuff going on and it's sort of explained, but not really.
It becomes a budget to the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's like, we got a projector and some people. It's like, let's do that.
We got some plastic. We got a crystal.
We have Friend is like whipping Zed and asking him questions about Arthur. He's got some warehouse with artifacts and arts in it. Like, it's kind of like a museum or something.
Yeah.
It shows up at the end. It's like the end. A lot of where the end is. There's computers that are kind of like Alexa, but not necessarily. Like, nobody uses a computer. Everybody just talks to a computer.
Yeah, they're way beyond.
But also, like the computer kind of like secretly controls everything, but just really doesn't have any influence either. But
well, the computer, in the end, the computer is like, essentially, I have no ideas.
Yeah.
It's like, the only idea I have is this must continue, because otherwise humanity dies. And that's my core programming. And that's when Zed's like, but this is a lifeless, dead world. And he's like, but there are still people alive. That's it. Kind of, the computer's caught in a continuous loop of its own, where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to maintain this because I don't have any other ideas.
Well, it's also like weird stuff you can compare it to, because we're also like watching Foundation. There's similar stuff there where it's like, this place is like an arc of humanity, what's supposed to be the best of it. But then it just never ends and nothing new is added.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of ends up storing itself despite the technological advances they have.
Yeah, I mean, none of the people that are like active in this society are dumb, but they have they've developed a really elaborate, complex, overthought society, and they keep changing that society all the time because that's progress, but really it's just pushing them further back. And they've been through this all before. This is like in Westworld too, where it's like, oh, these are the same, this is the same shit over and over and over again. How are we going to break out of this cycle?
Yeah, you can't have any new ideas if every moment somebody has a new idea, they have to vote on it, because basically just everybody votes no.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Does that sound familiar, anyone? Just checking. Never mind. Maybe I'm looking too far into Zardoz.
I don't really know what's going on at the 70s at this time that's, necessarily feeding into this.
Oh, just drugs.
Okay.
We got to remember, all the people that were the crazy hippies in the 60s, now they have cameras and stuff. This is why movies in the 70s some of them were amazing, but a lot of them were really weird. And this is one of the reasons why. It's like, let's take acid and make a movie. It's like, okay, well, this is... Except for Sean Connery. I think Sean Connery was into drugs. Like, he was more of a Scotch and fighting man. So.
We have a feast with just fruit and green bread.
Yeah, the green bread is a state. John Borman says people give him loaves of green bread. They'll dye the dough green just as they won't say anything else, but...
So nod and a wink.
Yep. Well, John Borman in the commentary said in the end, he goes, "This movie was really silly," but he also loved it too. He's like, "I still like it," but he even admits, he's like, "Oh, I wish we'd have done that different." And it's like, "Oh, if we had more money, we could have done that better." And he said he was coked out of his mind when he made it. I mean, he says that's from his own mouth. Like, yeah, this is what you get when you're writer, director, producer. Because not only am I rewriting the script, I'm directing it, and I'm worried about the budget all at the same time. And I've got a pound of cocaine to get through. So
we have May and Zed go into this mirror pyramid thing, which is where they were extracting his memories from before.
Yeah.
And they're watching like some broadcast of a guy getting sentenced for psychic violence.
Yep.
Because these people have like mind control powers, but they can also like project things, and it's not nothing you actually see. It's just a lot of weird acting towards each other.
Yeah, it's a lot of this.
Like,
or this.
Yeah.
And then maybe a sound effect, but a subtle one, like whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, what the hell? But Zed eventually becomes immune to that, because remember, he is the superior intellect, and genetically superior, because Frayne made him that way through some kind of genetic manipulation that's been going on with the exterminators for like 100 years or something. It's said in literally that quickly, and then it's on to the next thing. Like, well, wait a minute, what?
Then Zed and Friend are delivering bread to a bunch of catatonic people, and that's the apathetics. And
yes.
And Zed tries to have sex with one of them, but they don't move, and so he gets disinterested. So, that's just weird.
He's not into like simulated death sex. So it's like, oh, he's not a necrophile. There's limits to Zed's depravity.
He says the apathetics are a disease that's spreading through the vortexes. So I'm not sure if there's I'm not sure if there's just like multiple parts of this are called vortexes, or if there's another like arc like this area somewhere else.
There's got to be, because these are all just like British people.
Yeah.
So there's got to be like an American vortex. We'll find out in the sequel.
Well, actually, I was thinking other people that should have made this movie or a remake, and for some reason I was starting off with like David Fincher's Zardoz. And I was like wondering
written by Christopher Nolan.
It would just be this weird like trying to make too much sense out of Zardoz. But then I thought of like Spike Lee's Zardoz, and it wouldn't be anything like this. It would just be about like there'd be no inner dialogues for people. People just say stuff out loud, and it's just about like black athletes in America and how rich people like how they just like how they just worship them in weird ways, but want to own them too. And like them for their body.
Get Out, where it's like in vogue to become black people by stealing their bodies. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Spike Lee's Zardoz.
Denzel Washington would be Zed. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, and the apathetics say they just kind of don't want anything or don't do anything for themselves or others.
The scene Sean Connery, second most hated scene in the movie for Sean Connery, because he didn't like pulling that cart around with that guy in it because it was a prop and it was very taxing on him to do it.
Yeah.
And that whole scene in the woods, they're shooting uphill because it looked cool because it made Zed look bigger. But Sean Connery was pulling a guy in a 200-pound cart up a hill. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't like this, John." He's like, "Yeah, just one more take. And he was like, he like threw the thing down, almost walked off the set. He's like, "God damn it, I'm not doing this cart thing anymore. Are you trying to kill me?"
Yeah, because he's like 40 when he's doing this. Or something.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the Eternals
Still in
can.
good shape. I mean,
Yeah,
despite the fact of the ridiculous costume, he looked like a '70s like muscle guy. Like that was physical fitness in the '70s.
Oh, yeah, look at this. It looked like, oh, this is where like Tom Selleck got his ideas for Magnum PI.
See that?
Just replace the red underwear with like an open Hawaiian T-shirt and like white jeans or whatever he wears in that.
Hairy chests and guns. Yep.
Yeah. The Eternals can no longer become erect and thus can't procreate, or at least the men can't. And Zed is shown some porn, but it's more like avant-garde art.
Yeah, it's like people covered in mud.
Yeah, and a lady
weird humping motions and stuff.
Or there's a lady just showering her boobs with just endless soap.
Yeah.
But that doesn't and they're showing it to him like to see if he gets a reaction. But
and people are looking at his crotch like,
yeah.
Well, they're not showing his crotch.
Yeah, they're not showing it.
Looking at interest, like, is it gonna happen?
Yeah, it's only when he like stares down like Consuela that he gets an erection, because they seem to hate each other, and there's like some connection between violence and erections for this movie. So
my erection is for thee. Oh yeah, she gives a whole speech about erections. About sometimes before men are hung, they're found with like huge erections, and it's like must be tied into fear. We don't understand, what this is all about. We don't know, why men are, sexually aroused or what. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Just coming back to this, it's okay.
Yeah, so yeah, Zed is just a further science project for the Vortex, and like that's why they're allowing him to live. It's like once they're done with their science project, they're just gonna kill him.
Yeah.
Also, apparently the Eternals don't sleep or dream, but they meditate.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're weirded out by his sleeping. Like, he sleeps so much. He's so vulnerable. And then one of them tries to touch him, and he grabs her hand immediately. Like, oh. But yeah, he's kept in a cage like an animal. Very reminiscent of Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah, a lot of this movie is very reminiscent of Planet of the Apes.
Well, this movie's derivative of a lot of this. This movie is very Clockwork Orange, too.
Yeah.
Not only just in appearance, but also theme. Because just think about it for a second. A singularly brutal, violent guy becomes the victim of a corrupt government, and then it kind of defeats it in the end. In this case, more literally, but very close to Clockwork Orange themes. Not as well made.
Then like Consuela gets mad at Zed because he's like serving people at the table because Friend doesn't want to do his part, and he's like, I got Zed here, so. And then a psychic vote happens, and then the Zed has a week to live. And then Friend is psychically assaulted by the Vortex.
Yeah.
And he's like killed at the table, but then he shows up with the Renegades having aged.
On one side.
Yeah.
One side of his face looks like he had a stroke.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was all about. It was weird. It's probably it's like, how do we express this with the special effects budget we have? Because they make him look like Gandalf. No one's going to relate that he's Friend. So yeah. And
then Zed just kind of like tries to run away, but this is when he discovers just a force field that keeps him from escaping.
Yeah, where he like presses his whole face against it and like warps it while the camera's shooting, and it's just plexiglass, but it's like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah, and then Friend is aged and sent to live with the old people or the Renegades, and he confronts May. Zed confronts May about death, and she puts him in a flashback. That's where you kind of learn about like what they were doing. Where they're like, Zardoz had him stop just randomly killing people, and then has them like.
They're like overseers on a farm now.
Yeah. But then that
Because the
seems like,
Brutals are farming.
but that's like kind of against the, like, it's like, this is not what we do. So they start to kind of rebel a bit against Zardoz. But and then also that we get to they're just killing some random family in the middle of a derelict town, and then he ends up running into a library, and this is where basically he's tricked into learning to read.
Yeah.
And he just reads the whole library.
Yeah, this shows you like, oh, Zed's actually really, really smart because he can teach himself to read and then work himself through the library, and then finds the book The Wizard of Oz. And he covers up the W and then and you find out, oh, Zardoz.
Yeah.
Which is almost stupid.
Yeah.
Like, at the same time, it's like, well, I guess we have an explanation now.
I mean, Zardoz is a weird word, and then like it's fun that's just where it comes from. But,
yeah, it's stupid and like how would you say, it's stupid and satisfying at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
But I mean but also that just explains what like Arthur Frayne is. Like, he is just a guy behind a machine that's pretending to be a god. But even though, actually, here he is like kind of is a god, but he's just wishing for death in a weird way.
Well, he's a false god, like just like the Wizard of Oz was.
Yeah.
Don't look behind the curtain, It's like, oh, okay, he looked behind the curtain, he shot the guy, and gained enlightenment from it.
And that's why we find out that how Zed got in the floating head, where they just kind of dropped him in there with the grain they were harvesting.
Yeah, because him and all the exterminators are part of this broad genetic experiment, and they seem to know that they're different somehow.
Yeah.
Which is kind of seems like a late revision of the story, considering like Zed was just supposed to be this outland murderer guy, and it's like, oh no, he read a whole library and he's actually really smart. And it's like, well, that never was clear before. You think a guy who read the whole library would understand when he went into the zone, like what was, oh, I have a general idea of what's going on.
Do you think with the exterminators, do you think for Road Warrior, do you think they got a lot from this for there, or just
probably
pure coincidence? Okay.
Well, the Zardoz head is based on John Borman's face, like those masks they're wearing. He just used his face as I think that was just a way to save money.
Yeah.
But it's like the paper mache heads they're wearing and the Zardoz head are all kind of loosely based on him.
Well, I just like the kind of the S&M gear they're wearing in Road Warriors. It's like almost similar to here, but
oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
And Zed fights Consuela, and then she tries sentencing May because she's trying to learn things, and then Consuela blinds Zed with like the help of May. And then I have this being the end of the second act.
Yeah, this is where the movie stops making sense in a lot of ways. If it ever made sense before, it really gets... This third act's a little rough. I will admit I clicked ahead 10 seconds a few times just because I could only watch so much of this psychedelic nonsense.
So we have Avalo, who's like the naked lady on the horse, takes Zed away to heal him in her garden or whatever.
Garden of Sex and Healing.
And this is where they explain that they like the citizenry of this place is just like, that the world was ending, and the rich, the powerful, and the clever isolated themselves from the rest of the world to keep the world's knowledge, kind of like an ark, while they watched all the normal people suffer and die on the outside.
Literally watched it through the force field. People would come beat on the force field, and they'd be like, nope, keep farming.
And then we have the vortex. I guess they're the Eternals. That's really what they are. The Eternals come and burn the Apathetics village down.
Yeah.
And the Apathetics are cured by Zed's sweat, and then they start like group kissing with the sweat around, and it starts bringing them back to life.
Yep. Zed's sweet, sweet sweat is the opiate of the Apathetics. And then Zed and May, they have an information orgy with him.
Yeah.
Where he learns like everything there is about the immortals and the zones, and he learns what the tabernacle is and all this. And I guess at this time too, a lot of them become pregnant by him, but it's not like filmed, but it's like, oh, okay, that's a thing.
Well, then he escapes, so he eats the leaf that Avalo gave him.
Yeah.
Because she said in case of emergency. And then And then Zed is disguised in a wedding dress to get by Consuela.
Yeah, he's being married to Friend. That was the
Uh,
third most hated thing in this movie Sean Connery did. Not wearing a fucking wedding dress, John. I don't care what you're paying me. That's all you got to do. I guess it took him like 3 days to talk him into it.
and then there's like I think it's May, Friend, and Zed have like this toast with a gun
Yeah.
where Friend says to an end to eternity, May says to a higher form, and then Zed just says and revenge.
Yeah.
Like they're all the same thing.
From higher being to the end of immortality and to revenge.
And then we get, this is where I said this is basically like the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but just projected images on people speaking in different languages.
Yeah, people speaking in like Gaelic and Russian.
Is that like supposed to be? Is that like some sort of information transfer thing, or just weird?
Yeah, that's what I called like the information orgy.
Okay,
and,
okay.
yeah, that's what I kind of skipped a few things because I was like, oh, this is like an information, but if it was done in the form of an orgy from people in the 70s.
Zed tries to kill the tabernacle, but and then this is where we find out that people have like crystals in their brain. That's where they get the psychic stuff from, and that's why they can always transfer their memories to a new body or whatever. And then Zed finds Arthur in a museum. I like when it's like a different. He has like a makeup face on. And he just rips it off. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was weird.
And then Consuela can't kill Zed, and then just they like profess love for each other? Question mark.
Something.
And then Zed's trapped in a mirror maze because he's trying to kill the tabernacle again, and then the Eternals are destroying Friend's museum. But now Zed, because he has a crystal that is the tabernacle, the computer. Yeah. He now has psychic powers that he can use, and he like reverses time, kind of.
Yeah, somehow something happens.
Yeah, well, he tells the group with him, he's like, "Stay close to my aura," and then he like reverses time.
Like I said, there's a lot of this 70s woo-woo shit in this where I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever he says.
And then like one of the renegades is like, it was like the oldest guy there. He created the vortex because basically the people that created the city, they end up are either the renegades or they're actually dead, or mostly they're just the renegades. This is how they're imprisoned as old people. It's mostly like they're kind of understudies that are running everything, but they just want to keep the status quo. But they finally allow him to die, and the stone head just falls out of the sky.
Nope.
Because it's just been flying around in a search pattern the whole time.
Yeah, it's been kind of doing a loose figure eight around the vortex.
I like that, right? Zed just high fives some chicks on a horse.
Yep.
It's like it's an end of a basketball game or a baseball game. You gotta like shake the other team's hand.
Yeah, just running down this line of women because there's some of the immortals are leaving.
Yeah,
they're going because they're all pregnant by Zed, so they're all going to start this new genetic. They're ending genetic entropy.
Yeah.
But again, that's like you got to watch the commentary almost to understand what the hell's going on.
And then the force field comes down, and the Outlanders invade, and they kill the vortex, but the people welcome it. So.
Kill me! There's like hundreds of people running.
Yeah.
Towards these guys, and they're just like, we're running out of bullets. They're using swords. Yeah.
And then one of the exterminators is crying out for Zed, but he never answers back.
No, he's moved on from them because now he has all the knowledge of the library and the vortex.
Yeah, Zed and Consuela have sex, and have a kid in a cave, then grow old and die, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Sean Connery's least favorite scene in the movie. Because Sean Connery is not a guy who likes a lot of makeup effects and applications done to him. He doesn't like things touching him, and a lot of that stuff's very irritating to your skin. Well, they shot that whole scene stop motion once, and the guy overexposed the film, and so they had to shoot it again. And I guess when Sean Connery found that out, he became so violent on set. The assistant director of photography was the one who did that. He just fled the set. He was so scared of Sean Connery, so they reshot it, and then something else happened, and they had to reshoot parts of it again. And yeah, that was like his most hated part of the movie, was that last that Clockwork Orange scene of like death and renewal, because they have a baby and the baby grows up and then leaves and they grow old and then they just become skeletons, and then the skeletons just burn away into dust. They're just a handprint on the wall and Zed's gun for some reason after 2,000 years or whatever. By the way, that handprint was the director's.
Oh, okay.
So he just had to throw that in. But
there's a couple because the other what cameo the director makes is like when there are people farming, he's one of them that falls over and then Zed shoots him dead. That's the director. And apparently the wad and the blank of the gun got stuck in his head.
Yeah, he said, I've actually been shot by Sean Connery. I'm one of the few people that can say it. So I guess it took months for all that plastic to come out or whatever was in the blank.
Yeah.
It's like, we know those cause problems. Imagine if John Borman died on the set and this was his legacy.
Well, what's the most famous thing he did after this?
Excalibur.
Okay, yeah, probably.
He did The Exorcist 2 also.
All right.
But that was strictly for money. He said that.
Yeah.
And he thought the first movie was pretentious and weird. Go a different direction, and so he did make The Exorcist 2. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is your answer to pretentious and weird? All right. Exorcist 2 is kind of a cool movie, but for a different reason than the first Exorcist.
Yeah, that's why I hear.
It's like, it's good. It's a well-made movie. It's got a good story, but it's almost like a sanitized, like, no, we're going to scientifically analyze Satan. It's like, well, that's interesting. But yeah, I try to think. I have his filmography here. Because the one I know him the most for is Excalibur. The one he's like the best regarded one, I think, was The Deliverance. We also did Hell in the Pacific.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, because after Zardoz, he did The Exorcist 2, then he did Excalibur in 81. He did something called The Emerald Forest, that was the one with Powers Booth.
Oh.
And I know that was like done in Brazil, or that was set in Brazil, and he was like an engineer, and that got nominated for a bunch. And then there was the one, like kids growing up in London during the Blitz. What's that? Hope and Glory. That one got nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards. And really, that was kind of it for him, because the last one he did was the one with Mel Gibson and Sean Penn about the creation of the, what was it, the Webster's Dictionary? Or no, the other one.
The Oxford Dictionary?
That might be it. I think that was it. Yeah. And he only produced that one. So the last movie he directed was 2014's Queen and Country, which I've never seen. No. But yeah, it kind of ended, like Hope and Glory was like sort of his apex for, like he got the most nominations for anything on that. But The Deliverance is the one everyone knows.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make you squeal like a pig, boy. Everyone remembers that. But yeah, Zardoz is a super weird, downer 70s sci-fi movie. Because you got to remember the contemporaries of this movie is like, what I consider contemporaries of this movie is like Clockwork Orange, which it's a masterpiece. This is not, but it's like, it's kind of in the same vein of weirdness. And then Logan's Run, which is really weird. I mean, that's like the ultimate downer 70s sci-fi. Then Soylent Green was around. Planet of the Apes came before this. So this was kind of the genre of sci-fi that existed. Like I said, sci-fi really hadn't found its place, because Star Wars, that wasn't until 79, 78, something like that.
Yeah, it was late 70s.
Yeah, so that was really like because you had Star Wars and then you had Star Trek: The Motion Picture, two very different movies, but that sort of like changed the direction of like sci-fi, where you didn't do a lot of this like just kind of off the cuff weird homegrown stuff. It became a lot more formulaic. But this was like experimental. This would be like a weird student film nowadays or something, a really elaborate student film or something.
I mean, the only thing that makes it sci-fi is like you assume it's Earth and it says 2293.
Yeah.
And the floating head. I mean, this could have been, a Lord of the Rings if you wanted it to be.
Well, interestingly enough, this was when this was this period between The Deliverance and his next movie. He wanted to do Lord of the Rings, and he adapted the script for Lord of the Rings. And he went to Warner Brothers, and they're like, "There's no way this is gonna work. This is too expensive." Because he wanted to do what Peter Jackson did 30 years later with this kind of technology and money, which would have been cool to see, but probably wouldn't have been very good. So then he did this. Like I said, he was coming off as high of The Deliverance, and he kind of had carte blanche. And when the studio looked at the script and stuff, they immediately started like slashing the budget. Like, whoa, God, this is weird. Now, I will say this movie, as far as the cinematography and how it looks and where it's set, looks gorgeous. Like the scenes of the land and all that is like in the rolling hills and all that. That looks really cool. Like they really, because this is all shot in a place called County Wicklow, Ireland, or something. And
yeah,
like
I mean, I definitely want to see like a remastered version of this. But
yeah, and I like how a lot of the extras they found were like those. Remember the characters from Snatch that were like the boxers? What do they call them? The travelers or whatever.
Pikeys.
Yeah. Be careful. I think that's a racist term. But yeah. The guys who box, the Irish travelers, what they call them.
Irish gypsies.
Yeah, they were all the extras in this. And John Borman said they were the best extras he ever had because they liked the food and they always showed up on time and did exactly what he said. And they always got fed and they were always real happy about that. And they each got like 100 pounds or whatever for the day. And so they were always there when shooting started. You never had to wonder if the extras were going to show up because they were happy to be there. Yeah, this is again, it's a weird movie. I'm not gonna. I don't know if I'd recommend people watch. I mean, you need to watch it once, maybe.
Yeah. Or just watch that clip on YouTube where the head vomits the guns. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of all you need.
Well, that's what everyone knows it for. I like it that it's like if you really kind of just watch this is like the 5th time I've seen it. If you just watch the movie, you realize, oh, this movie has a lot to say.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of like class warfare stuff that's going on here that's easily interpretable, and like even stuff that just like unfortunately still relates today. Because like that's why I was sitting here wondering. It's like, well, that relates today. I wonder what was going on at the time that this is supposed to be reflecting of. Because you could see the apathetics is just like, oh, these young people don't want to work, but it's like, you have no jobs for us to take, at least no good jobs.
Yeah, they don't want to slop hogs for free. What's wrong with these people?
And then you have like the eternal Congress that our eternal Congress, they age, but they still don't lose any power whatsoever.
No,
and have no new ideas and can't get anything done.
Nope.
And the people who can get done are they're not getting anything done. They're not getting anything good done for the people. They're just getting things are changing for the worse, and they're spearheading it. Oh, look what we can get done. It's like, you didn't do anything. You just burned everything to the ground.
This represents change, and that's always good, right? Because change means like a bunch of rich people get even richer. That's what change is, and in our system. Yeah, that's why I kept saying, does this sound familiar throughout the whole talk on this movie? Because
it's all the there's all the rich people and all the like the anti-aging stuff they're investing in, where like they're basically going to become space eternals. We're like, we have our own space company now, we own a planet and we will never age or die. And none of this will be available to poor people, because if eternity exists and everybody can have it, then we're going to destroy the entire universe.
Yeah. So it's better if us, the elect, have this. Instead of doing something that's like maybe not crazy but might benefit everyone. Like, no one needs to live forever, but people need to live long, happy, productive lives, and then just suddenly die. Like just
Yeah.
imagine if you look like you were 30 all your life, and at 300 you just dropped over dead.
Yeah.
Or you did what they do on the Foundation, you just walk into that radioactive field and disappear into dust. It's like, well, he had his 300 years, so make the most of it. But no, that's not. No, it'll all be hoarded by small-minded people that have, like, the best thing they ever did, they did. In the case of our billionaires 30 years ago, in the case of these people, like 300 years ago, was the best thing they ever did, and they're just repeating the same formula over and over again. So yeah,
or contorting the rules to benefit them because they need to live forever.
Or creating things to fight about that are completely non-essential to anyone's life. It's just like we're just moving pieces so we can climb to the top of this moral totem pole and then continue to fuck everything up. By the way, be total degenerates ourselves, but you are not allowed to.
Yeah. Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And in the end, when like the exterminators come in and kill everybody, it's not necessarily like, oh, what a glorious day, we're all free now. Yeah. It's like those people are also awful.
Yeah, they're just evil people. Well, they're not evil. They're doing what is normal.
They're programmed to do.
Yeah. It's like they're not killing these people out of hate or fear or anything. It's just like, oh, okay, kill them. Yeah, that's what you do to people that, because God says it's okay. The fake God says, oh, by the way, we stabbed our God with a sword, but we didn't know it. Well, I think the exterminators knew, because if they were all like Zed, they were smart enough to be like, hey, we're being misled here. And really what we should do is go live in a Zardoz head, have a baby with a woman, and just decay into skeletons. Oh, by the way, I don't know if that was clear. That's where they were living when they had their son. Was the Zardoz head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you see like the eye or whatever, and they're walking to a cave, and it's like, oh, that's a Zardoz head, and just kind of embedded in the ground halfway sideways.
Yeah. This is where we make camp. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a weird movie with interesting parallels to today, but all science fiction has parallels to today. But
yeah, these aren't like new parallels. No, like I said, we're watching Foundation. There's a lot of the same stuff going on there. So
yeah. So, like I said, check it out. It's worth a look. It's worth one look. If you got one day where you're not doing anything else, and you want a real psychedelic 70s, sex ride, just watch this, or watch Barbarella or any of the other weird movies of that era and time.
Watch what's the movie with like the floating jet skis? Flash Gordon.
Oh yeah, Flash Gordon's cool. Actually, is kind of cool in its own weird way. I just like it because Max von Sydow's in it, but
that's got a great soundtrack.
Oh yeah, wonderful soundtrack. Brian Blessed's in it. He's always great.
Well, if you liked what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or whatever podcast platform of your choice. You can rate our podcast. You can rate it whatever you want, but the only thing the algorithm listens to is whatever the highest rating is. You can write a review, which you can just write, this podcast gets me through the workday, because people like to hear that. We have lists at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect. We have listener support where you can support this podcast at a monthly stipend of 99 cents or $4.99 or $9.99. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook Verhoeven Effect. We have another podcast called American Greed Factory at the American Greed Factory YouTube. You can listen to that and this podcast live and unedited if you want to.
We could be like This American Life. If you want to listen to an uncensored version of this podcast, look on YouTube. Or Nathan says the F word yet again.
Is that what NPR is doing now?
That's what This American.
Or This America. Okay.
Yeah, they've always had that. The uncensored and censored podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's making a joke.
I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I didn't know what they're doing. T-shirts. We sell T-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. I'm also on twitch.tv at twitch.tv/Greed Factory. Right now I'm just playing feature called Puzzles and Podcasts, where I play Tetris and listen to other people's podcasts. Like today, I was listening to the Doughboys special podcast where they did a Die Hard Christmas, but with the Doughboys, and it was all weird and funny, and I won 2 games of Tetris 99. So if you don't know what Tetris 99 is, it's a competitive Tetris game. So we play against 99 people online.
Oh, that makes sense.
I am pretty good at it. Well, it depends on who I have to play. So there are a lot of really good people out there. So
No.
anyways, for this podcast, this is Conlon.
And this is Nathan.
Goodbye, America.